we are going to be looking particularly at your music that
Great.
you have released
Yeah.
under the name Lots
It
Holloway.
was almost as if I was excited. Great! I can't wait. How exciting!
Yeah, I know.
I don't know why.
If you're comfortable.
Hello and welcome to Dylan's Deep Cuts, a podcast mini-series where I and my best mate and manager, Megan, go into detail about how I remade some of my old music after coming out as transgender and transitioning. Just a little note, this episode contains explicit language.
We all know you as a musician, Dylan and the Moon. However, prior to that, some of us might know you as Lots Holloway when you were releasing music. And what we're going to do is look at those original versions next to the new versions.
Yeah, essentially, I came out as a transgender man in 2020 and went through my transition, which included the medical transition where I was on hormones. So my voice has changed. I look a lot different. And I, like you said, I was releasing music all throughout my life under the name Lots Holloway. And then through my transition, changed my name to Dylan Holloway now. And I decided at a certain point when I felt comfortable enough that I would re-record my old songs in a new way. So we're going to take one episode at a time and talk about the songs that I have re-recorded in a new way.
One thing I wanted to ask, though, about what you just mentioned is you mentioned when I felt comfortable doing that. I mean, I think it's remarkable that you have been able to transition, which would have come with its own struggles in its own way. With that, how much of a challenge was it to then actually work with your former self, this former self that you actually wanted to transition away from?
It's kind of like, it's hard to describe actually, because a lot of me at that time thought I was going to move away completely. A lot of me, because I felt so trapped for such a long time, I thought when I transition, that will be it. I will put Lots in a box and I will move on, and I want to be Dylan. I want everyone to acknowledge me as Dylan. I want to move past this and I want to live my new life as Dylan and only that. And that was, the majority of my brain capacity was like 90%. That's what I wanted to do. But I think a lot of that was fear-based because I was still in the mode of being Lots turning into Dylan, if you will. And I still felt uncomfortable in the place that I was. So the idea of imagining moving forward and being so okay with my old self was unfathomable to me at that time. However, there was a small part of me, that 10%, who almost had the intuition and the foresight that I might want to do this in the future if I felt comfortable. So I began recording things throughout my transition in case I ever felt comfortable enough to be able to do things like duet with myself or, like be my own female, in inverted commas, backing vocalist. And it was only in the transition, becoming more of myself, chiseling away and seeing myself, reflected in a mirror, that I could really understand that Lots is the person who I have been, who actually brought me to become Dylan. So I was able to appreciate them and say, do you know what? You were fucking sick. And actually, I want to bring you into my life. And I don't want to disregard you as a person. And the music that we wrote at that time was really powerful to me. And I wanted to, when I then felt comfortable as Dylan, to embrace that. So it was really hard. And I just sort of was doing so much stuff in private and trying to lock everyone out because I didn't know how I would feel.
Absolutely. So when it came to the point of actually embracing that and duetting with yourself, was it an eerie experience? Did you come to feel new ways about you?
Well, the first time I remember it happening was actually I had moved into a year of my transition, and my voice had dropped quite a lot. And I was going back through some old files to find something else. And I stumbled upon the Heaven Now project files. And I opened it up just for a laugh. And I soloed out the choir section and some other stuff. And I realized that I could now sing that song an octave below. And I started sort of jamming and singing out the song. And then I heard, objectively, the voice that was supposed to sing that song in the first place. When I wrote all of my music, the whole thing that exists on Lots' page, all of those songs were written and I could hear my voice now, my male voice, in my head. And then when I used to record and go to the studio, I would hear some other voice come back to me, and it sounded really floaty and feminine in inverted commas. And I just couldn't understand how that voice was coming out because it wasn't how it sounded in my head. So then opening up this project, I sang it and I was like, fuck me. That is how I wanted this song to sound 5 years ago, or however many, 3 or 4 years ago. So that was the first time I was like, maybe there is something here I can really tap into. So it was quite exciting. On the flip side, there were moments where that was actually quite painful. In a liberating way, it was quite painful. For example, when I opened up the Off My Brain project again, after about 6 to 8 months of not singing it, because I was recording the choir part so that I could do the soprano all the way down to the tenor and have it in the background. And I did that for the first 6 months of my transition, when it was sort of when my voice was changing the most. And then I didn't open up that project again until about a year and 2 months, when my voice had changed quite significantly and I could now sing the whole song down the octave. So I put my headphones on and I was like, I'll just record it now. It will sound great. I put the cans on and I could hear lots in all of the ways singing, and it felt like I was being surrounded by these swimming voices of this version of me that used to exist. And I then, sang with my voice now the main part, and I remember just bursting into tears, like really. I was just like penetrated with pain, with freedom all at once. And it just felt like every version of me that had ever existed was swimming around my ears, supporting me, this person who was now stood in the spotlight. And what it did to me was pinpoint that I had made it to the position in my life that I'd always dreamt about. And although it was liberating, it like really fucking hurt. Yeah. I don't know. I can't explain it, but it was like you have actually done the thing that you dreamed about when you were a kid.
Yeah.
And through music, you've been able to capture the whole thing.
I think that is like so poignant, and you haven't told me that before, and that is like.
I have footage of it as well, because obviously we were recording I recorded all the footage throughout my transition as well, so that I could give back to people and try and put it together for something that people can easily digest. And I actually did film that moment. And you can see that I'm trying not to cry, and then all of a sudden it just overcomes me and I can't stop, and then I don't stop.
Yeah, I mean, I think to the outside perspective, it can often look like, God, what a legend, like he's just doing this now, like he's just duetting with his former self, like, oh, brilliant, great. I mean, that can't have been, as you've just described, like that can't have been easy to go through and keep rehashing. It's an amazing situation to be in, where you can listen to yourself perform something, you've got it, you've saved it, you did press record prior to 2020. The mental resilience that it takes to actually go, okay, I might have to edit these vocals that are lotses and take hours doing this, when actually like this is me. It isn't just a backing singer. It isn't just a female session musician that you've got right?
And it's a person who's when you hear their voice still holds the weight of the pain that you felt when you existed as that person. So it was really painful, but I don't know. There's just and this might sound silly, but there's something to me about music which I find so much salvation in, that it just, for me, because it was in music, it softened the blow. It was like, because I'm creating something beautiful out of this, it's okay.
Yeah.
And hopefully that it would be able to therefore transform into something that can help other people. It made it okay.
Do you get nostalgic? Because obviously I've known you for a really long time. Is there something, you were out there in the public eye for quite a long time. You were able, well, for all intents and purposes, to your audience, able to be you. We thought, as Lots Holloway. Like, how does it feel then when you're working with yourself? Does it feel like you're working with yourself when you hear Lots' voice? Or does it feel like you're working with someone you used to know?
To me, it kind of feels like a bit of both, actually. No one's ever asked me that question, but it does feel like a bit of both, especially when I'm looking at footage and when I am embracing like the duets that I've done where you can visually see me singing with myself. That to me feels like I'm working with another person, because it's kind of like, well, that was me then and this is me now. They are like to me almost like two different people, although I'm the same. So that feels like I'm working with someone else in a way, and remaking the music video for Off My Brain.
Right.
Even when I watch it now, I can't see them as the same. Like I'm like, well, they're just different people.
Yeah.
But when I am in the writing phase, and when I say that, I mean when I strip off my brain, for example, back to just me and the guitar or me and the piano, I can hear both me and Lots, and I feel the essence of why the song came to light in the first place, and then it really feels like I'm working with myself. You see what I mean?
I suppose like there's a benefit to it, right? Like as a musician, when you go into a situation where you have to collaborate with someone else, you know, it might be that you're trying to make these harmonies and these vocals blend and fit someone else's nuances, and I suppose you've almost got like this upper hand because you were there doing it. You kind of like know what you're gonna do because you did it, but it sounds so different. You know what I mean? Like
it is interesting because it feels like quite a well-oiled machine. And sometimes when I go back into the project, when I was recording some of the vocals for these tracks, I recorded something, you know, in my Dylan voice, and then I would unmute a Lots channel just to check something, and I would realize that an inflection on a word was exactly the same. Exactly. And even recording, sometimes I record a video, and you know, I lean, if I'm playing my guitar and I sing a big note, I like lean back, and then I'll put it next to a Lots video, and I realize that we're rocking at the same time. So those things are like intrinsically you as an artist, the things that you can't change, you don't need to change, because that's so interesting, because the way that you're talking about that is like it's a surprise to you. Do you know what I mean? And to me, when I'm obviously sitting here and listening to you say that, I'm like, that's not surprising. I suppose it's not surprising at all. I think that's because of the distance that I put between me and that person during the transition, because and I think it's because of the headspace I'm in. So like when I lived as Lots, I wasn't that happy. And I looked really happy, but I actually wasn't that happy. I wasn't living my true, authentically joyful life. I just pretended to be. And I was locked in this sort of mental cage. And now, because I am so free and alive and joyful, I therefore feel like the things that I do with my voice and the character and those things will therefore be different. But actually, the artist bit in the center of all those things has stayed the same. Thank you for listening to Dylan's Deep Cuts. Keep an ear out for more episodes in this series by hitting the follow button. And feel free to come find me online at Dylan and the Moon. Have a nice day.